I could please have everyone take their seats. We're going to be starting in just a moment.
My name is Peter Orn, and I'm the Dean of the School of General Studies. I'm a professor of Islamic religion, and so I am in total awe of your scientific accomplishments. It's something I am incapable of, and I am extraordinarily proud to be the dean of a school that really fosters this extraordinary program and really extraordinary individuals. And so on behalf of the Columbia faculty and administration, I want to welcome you this afternoon to the Class Day ceremony celebrating the accomplishments of the graduates of the Postbaccalaureate Premedical Pre-Health Program. The oldest and most distinguished program of its type in the country. We gather together to recognize both the extraordinary intellectual accomplishments of the graduates and their commitment to a career of humanitarian service. I am reminded that the challenges you face today are challenges healthcare professionals have faced for hundreds of years. One of the great medical scientists of the early medieval period was the Muslim physician Abu Bakr al-Razi, who died in 925. He was known in later European Latin sources as Razes. A renowned practitioner and researcher, Razi worked at the center of learning and imperial power at the time in Baghdad. His greatest work, the Encyclopedia of Medicine, was translated into Latin and published 5 times up through the 16th century. Now, I don't know what that says about 16th century medicine, that they were still using an early 10th century text, but he was clearly a renowned scholar of medicine throughout the Western world. But towards the end of his life, Razi was under attack from the religious conservatives of his time for privileging reason and the quest for scientific knowledge over religious dogma. In one of his last writings before his death, he attempts to defend the role of science and healing in a world plagued by dogmatism. He argues that Socrates' life should be the model for the Muslim scientist. After death, he writes, we shall find ourselves in a state that is either admirable or reprehensible, according to the life we have lived while our souls were associated with our bodies. The supreme end for which we were created and towards which we have been led is not the gratification of physical pleasures, but the acquisition of knowledge and the practice of justice. These 2 occupations, the quest for knowledge and the practice of justice, are our sole deliverance out of the present world into the world wherein is neither pain nor death. I can think of no individuals who better embody these ideals of knowledge and justice than those of you sitting before us today. You are scientists, but also humanists, artists, social scientists, all dedicated to the pursuit of truth and the alleviation of suffering. And like Razi over 1,000 years ago, you will face scientific and ethical challenges, even condemnation, that would overwhelm most people. I am convinced, however, that once you enter upon your careers as healthcare professionals, you will be fully equipped to engage and grapple with these challenges. On behalf of all of us at Columbia, I want you to know how proud we are of your accomplishments, how proud we are to count you members of the Columbia family. I would like to introduce to you Dean Victoria Rosner. Dean Rosner will introduce today's keynote speaker.
Thank you, Dean On, and welcome once again to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us here today on this extremely important occasion. It's my pleasure to introduce to you our keynote speaker, Dr. Stephen Nicholas. Dr. Nicholas is already well known to many of you as the Dean of Admissions for the Columbia University School of Physicians and Surgeons. But he is also a pediatrician who was at the forefront of developing treatment for the first generations of children born infected with the HIV virus. He has cared for these children in Harlem, in Washington Heights, and in the Dominican Republic. During his time as Director of Pediatrics at Harlem Hospital, he also founded the Harlem Children's Zone Asthma Initiative. In 1999, Dr. Nicholas founded the Columbia University International Family AIDS Program, which introduced the first AIDS treatment for pregnant women and long-term AIDS care and treatment for families in the Dominican Republic. Thanks largely to Dr. Nicholas's work, the city of La Romana in the Dominican Republic has lowered the rate of mother-to-child HIV transmission to a rate comparable with New York's. Dr. Nicholas's tremendous commitment to both local and international public health has been honored with many awards, including the Claire Lucille Pace Humanitarian Award from Columbia University and the New York State Governor's Award for Outstanding Service on behalf of children with AIDS. He is the founder and director of the Columbia University International Family AIDS Program, providing health services, education, and research in the Dominican Republic, Johannesburg, Haiti, and St. Petersburg. I knew very little about Dr. Nicholas's extraordinary public health record when I first met him. I mostly knew that he had recently been named Associate Dean of Admissions for Columbia PNS, and I suggested that we go out to lunch. Then and since, I have been struck repeatedly by his erudition, his kindness, his care, his modesty, and his immense dedication to students. My opinion of him could scarcely be higher, but most of the students actually think he has magical powers, since he appears to hold the total contents of each of their admissions files in his head and will pick them out at information sessions and say, "Don't you play the jazz tuba?" or "Aren't you fond of chihuahuas?" And they just go, "Whoa." I think the truth is actually more impressive than magic. He cares deeply about making each of the students feel important and valued. It has been a privilege to know and work with him, and I could not be more delighted that he is here to speak with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Steve Nicholas.
Boy, I don't know if I can live up to that introduction or not. Dean On, Dean Rosner, fellow deans, faculty members, parents, friends, graduates. It really is an honor to be here with you this afternoon. You know, a year ago, I didn't really know very much about the Columbia Postbac Premed Program. It had a good reputation, great reputation. I had interviewed over the years of being on the admissions committee several individuals that had come out of this program, and I can remember that they stuck out in my mind as being unusually interesting, a little older than average, culturally broad backgrounds, circuitous paths to medicine, but possessing, I thought, a kind of hybrid vigor. But these are sort of vague impressions. But over the past year, I've gotten to know the program's leadership, some of the faculty, many of the students here, primarily because of that lunch you just heard about. Maybe the first day of my new position as Dean for Admissions. And Victoria Rosner quickly realized that I wasn't quite dry behind the ears. So at this lunch, she tried to keep her jaw from dropping when I asked, "What's a glide year?" And I confessed that I didn't know what linkage was all about. And so the rest is history. I can tell you that it's with great enthusiasm that we've accepted our first 11 linkage students for the incoming class of 2015, and what a stellar group they are. So I feel very much like I'm here today with a large group of friends or friends-to-be, and it's truly an honor to be here with all of you. Well, when I started speaking years ago, a friend of mine took me aside and said, "Let me just sort of give you the rules." He said, "If you're going to be seen, stand up. If you're going to be heard, speak up. If you're going to be appreciated, shut up." So my comments will be brief. The same friend also advised me, when you're going to give a talk, always finish writing your speech at least a week in advance, throw it in a corner, leave it alone, come back to it a couple days before you speak, rehearse it a couple times, then get a good night's sleep the night before, get up, do some exercises, have a light breakfast, dress spiffily, skip the morning news, read a fun novel, and then you'll be mentally and physically prepared as you can be. So, using all that advice, I did those things, and I woke up this morning, did my exercise, ate my breakfast, hopped on the train from northern Westchester with my finished talk in my briefcase, and proceeded to read Steve Martin's new novel, An Object of Beauty, which is about the New York art scene. It turns out to be very good reading. And then I started to hear the most disturbing conversation, which I'll tell you about in a moment. So that was the beginning of my morning. I was so disturbed after I got off the train. I then went into an event over at Columbia that turned out to be one of the most exhilarating events that I've had in recent time. And then I went back to my office. I threw my talk away and I rewrote my talk. So you're going to have to tell me whether that was a big mistake or not. Let me first of all say a word to the parents and to the teachers to some degree, but especially the parents. We're here to graduate a whole group of marvelous individuals and to celebrate that graduation, but I'm also a father of 4 children, ages 15 to 21. I'm a pediatrician, professor. So I really am here to celebrate both the parents and the teachers. We've got a corporate responsibility to remember the past, celebrate the present, and hope for the future of each graduate now perched on the launch of a medical education and career. So on days like today, I can always feel myself getting just pulled back into the nostalgic, remembering that wonder-filled day of birth when out came the head, and then one shoulder, and then the other shoulder, and then the whole little body, and the umbilical clamp goes on, and you're waiting with bated breath for the APGAR scores, and the first one's usually 8, and the second one's usually 9, and you're thinking, come on, my kid deserves a 10. So you start having these sort of thoughts. Now, on the one hand, you start letting your mind race at the not then in the delivery room very soon, and then for years, you race to the future. You wonder big longitudinal thoughts, like, will my child grow up to be successful? Will he be good? Will she be happy? Now, the father and pediatrician in me know that along the way there are some less elegant real-life thoughts fueled by fears of frustration or just fears and the everyday workload of childbearing. And some of us had thoughts like these: will this kid ever sleep through the night? And our fears were flamed by the story of the college freshman who had never once in 18 years slept through the night, who, by the way, did not go to Harvard. I don't want to start any false rumors. And I was asked more than once, is it true that the American Academy of Pediatrics no longer sanctions the use of sleep-inducing sugar cubes soaked with gin? And some of us suppressed thoughts like, should I do something now or wait till my child walks to approach the Olympic soccer coach? Or my wife's real question after our firstborn came along: am I really expected to breastfeed after his teeth come in? So life raising children is filled with innumerable small concerns, but on days like today, we return to big longitudinal thoughts, when today feels like an end point at which we can say something about whether the graduates before us have turned out to be successful, happy, or good. We can say congratulations for your success in graduating from the oldest to the largest and inarguably one of the very best and most wonderfully preparatory Postbac Premed programs in the country. But we also know that today is not really an end point, but simply a landmark on the path to something more real, more important. Because what really concerns each of you graduates is the future, what lies ahead. What is my life as a doctor going to be like? And during this raucous and polarized period of debate over healthcare reform, all of you undoubtedly have heard some negative, even alarming things. So let me tell you about the conversation on the train. There I am, reading my nice little book, not bothering a soul, when I overheard two individuals who turned out to be pre-med students, working part-time for doctors in private practice. And apparently, so I overheard, they've taken their MCATs, they're going to be applying to medical schools next year. And for the first half of the trip, they incessantly complained about how horrible medicine had become, how outside interference in medicine had stolen doctors' power. There are people with far less knowledge than the physician who are making all the decisions, that patients no longer trust doctors, that you used to be able to make a decent living, but now medicine just doesn't pay. And then they proceeded to talk about ways that they dreamed of to maximize their income while minimizing their hours, including opening up more labs, buying more imaging machines. And then they talked in the most derisive way imaginable about the problem patients they encountered. They didn't talk about names, but they were just completely irreverent. And I was quite upset in hearing this, and I wanted to say something, but I just held my tongue, getting off the train with what Edith Wharton called the belated eloquence of the inarticulate. My head then filling with really clever but way too late one-liners. Well, on my way to the medical center this morning, I began to wonder if we in academic institutions are excessively sheltered from some of the realities that confront the field of medicine, especially private practitioners. Those two students might have been mimicking what they hear on the job from the doctors they work with. We all hear stories about doctors who have become soured on medicine. And perhaps the problem is more pervasive than I think. Perhaps my own personal vantage point is narrow and non-representative. I've had 30 years of an endlessly fascinating career working with children with HIV and their families, as you heard, in Harlem, Washington Heights, Dominican Republic. And I gotta tell you, my idealism burns probably brighter than it did when I was first in medical school. And my own enthusiasm for medicine is absolutely undiminished. And I know the same could be said for colleagues that I've worked with for years. But perhaps we're anomalies. A cloud of doubt began to creep over my consciousness. So I knew I was headed to give this talk this afternoon, and I wondered if my remarks, which I wanted to be optimistic and encouraging, would somehow be unrealistically off the mark. Would I be leading all of you down some sort of a garden path? Well, with those sort of clouds lingering over me, I then went to the PNS Alumni Day, in which I participated in the 50th anniversary of the class of 1961, in which a group of academicians, researchers, significant number of people in private practice reenacted their graduation from medical school. Each graduate from the class came forward, received a diploma. Roy Vagelos, who graduated from PNS in 1953. That was the year of my birth, folks. That was a long time ago. Former CEO of Merck, who recently donated $50 million to Columbia to build a new medical education building, talked absolutely in a riveting, enthusiastic way about the work he's still doing in drug development and medical education. He then read the Hippocratic Oath in Greek, and then the entire group of doctors, not just the class of 61, but everyone present, assembled and proceeded to read the modern English version of the Hippocratic Oath that we use for every incoming group of medical students during their white coat ceremony, and which we then use again at the time of graduation. And I want to read it to you. Now, those of you who are coming into medicine are going to hear this again, but it seems to me during these times when we have self-doubts, when we wonder where medicine is headed, it is not a bad idea simply to hear the words of this oath. I swear to fulfill to the best of my ability and judgment this covenant. I will respect the hard-won scientific gains of those physicians in whose step I walk, and gladly share such knowledge as is mine with those who are to follow. I will apply for the benefit of the sick all measures that are required, avoiding those twin traps of overtreatment and therapeutic nihilism. I will remember that there is art to medicine as well as science, and that warmth, sympathy, and understanding may outweigh the surgeon's knife or the chemist's drug. I will not be ashamed to say, I know not, nor will I fail to call in my colleagues when the skills of another are needed for a patient's recovery. I will respect the privacy of my patients, for their problems are not disclosed to me that the world may know. Most especially must I tread with care in matters of life and death. It is given to me to save a life, all thanks, but it may also be within my power to take a life. This awesome responsibility must be faced with great humbleness and awareness of my own frailty. Above all, I must not play at God. I will remember that I do not treat a fever chart, a cancerous growth, but a sick human being whose illness may affect the person's family and economic stability. My responsibility includes these related problems if I am to care adequately for the sick. I will prevent disease whenever I can, for prevention is preferable to cure. I will remember that I remain a member of society with special obligations to all my fellow human beings, those sound of mind and body as well as the infirm. If I do not violate this oath, may I enjoy life and art, respected while I live and remembered with affection thereafter. May I always act so as to preserve the finest traditions of my calling, and may I long experience the joy of healing those who seek my help. There wasn't a dry eye in the group. So this is more than nostalgia. This is what everybody signed on up for, certainly the class of 1961, 50 years ago, and it's still a set of moral standards to which they still adhere. So it was more like really a golden wedding anniversary, celebrating this love affair between two people who have deeply respected each other for 50 years. The talk before and after this event was about the profound admiration these doctors have had and continue to have for the profession of medicine. Privileged was the word I heard repeatedly. I was privileged to become a doctor. They weren't complaining about the sacrifices they'd made. They weren't saying they wished they'd made more money. They reveled in the disbelief, as one person put it, that many are called and few are chosen. Repeatedly, I heard the word calling, although many of them are now retired, a surprising number still involved in patient care, research, or teaching. What I didn't hear once was, you know, this profession has gone to the dogs, or I really wish I'd gone into investment banking, or HMOs have ruined everything, or I wish I'd retired sooner. though in fairness, it's certainly possible that any graduate from the class of '61 who feels that way might have chosen to stay home. Who knows? But this was not a group which anyone assumed the tone of Eeyore. For those of you who read Winnie the Pooh, you know, that gloomy, moping donkey who famously said, "Well, it's not much of a tale, but I'm kind of attached to it." No, this was a group that, let's see where, oops, I'm losing my place here, of really bright, very enthusiastic, stimulating people. The concept I heard expressed most this morning was about renewal. The secret to being a good doctor for many years, said one, was the art of regular self-renewal. One of them said this morning that while he didn't love all the constraints and complexities and battles with health insurance companies that came along with managed care, he still felt that healthcare reform was critically important. We have to find a more affordable way to take care of all of us, he said. We can't go back to a system for the rich that deprives the poor. He then said, if you're going to stay on the top of the tide of change called progress, you can't sit still. I get amused, he said, when colleagues complain that medicine is changing. I tell them, of course, it's changing. Well, it is true. Medicine has changed constantly from the time of Hippocrates. I love to point people to my favorite New Yorker cartoon, which shows Adam and Eve rushing out of the Garden of Eden, clutching their fig leaves to themselves, and Adam turns to Eve and says, I think we're in a period of transition. Well, we are in a period of transition, but certain things won't change. The core value at the center of medicine, this wonderful agreement that patients have with their doctors that allows us, the doctors, to listen with a compassionate ear to utmost secrets, that allows us to touch, examine, even invade their bodies in the hopes of improving their health. That is very sacrosanct, timeless, and that's a relationship that will never change. If doctors get up every morning and the first thing they think about is the quality of life of their patients, then they have come into medicine for the right reasons, and those reasons will withstand changes in the landscape. So, never mind those two on the train. We're not going to accept them anyway, and I hope, I really hope they find their just rewards doing something that doesn't require them to touch a human being. So, remember the class of '61. There are role models. That's who I want to be when I grow up. They can attest in moments when we waver that there is no higher calling than medicine, that the future shines brightly for all of us who carry on in pursuit of the high ideals that have brought us this far. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nicholas, for your inspiring words. As I look out on the crowd of students who are completing the requirements for the Postbac certificate, I see so much potential, and I'm struck by what a short time you've all been here. From your first physics exam through last night's biology final, many of you would agree that it seems like only months. But in that time, you've grown intellectually and socially, and you've matured in thought and deed. Just as your family and friends share in the pride of your hard-earned accomplishments, so does everyone at Columbia University who's tried to help you realize your dreams while you've been here. I'm now happy to say that the time has come to recognize you individually. I now invite Deans Ahn and Rosner, Dean Sunshine and Dean Mitchell, Janet Griffith from the Alumni Affairs Office, and Professors Mauschwitz and Hazen to step forward and help us congratulate our newest graduates. When your name is called, please step to the dais. Mercedes Albrecht. Roderick Alfonso. Mia Areola. Mark Barber. John Barnes. Kristen Beck. Rebecca Bernstein. Kate Biblowitz. Michael Biles. Alexandra Blaze. Joseph Blankush. Lisa Bosco. Aaron Broderick. Jason Burmeister. Michael Serto. Linda Chamberlain. Stephanie Charles. Jacob Kogan. Max Cohen. Amanda Cole. Suzanne Davis. Patricia Driscoll. Laura Durant. Ian Savage Elliott. Stephanie Ellis. Jeremy Fertel. Catherine Fleming. Ansley Gates. Jason Gordon. Riley Grates. Lola Grillo. Jennifer Harrington Knopf. Jonathan Heyman. Elizabeth Hillenbrand. Eve Hollowell. Kirsten Huckle. Steve Kessler. Sam Kiernan. Maya Koenig-Zylowski. Jesse Koski. Sarah Kramer. Julie Kwan. Samuel LaRusso. Megan Leary. Margot Lederhandler. Allison Levy. Deborah Horenstein. Chad Marin. Eden Marks. David Matherly. Rachel Meislin. Daniel Modell. James Murrett. Calvin Nash. Michael Natter. Antonia Nemanich. Victoria North. Caitlin O'Connor. Orrin Pale. Taylene Pompanini. Brittany Banks Paulini. Esther Park. Roy Podliski. Paul Promadhat. Eric Quintana. Alice P. Randall. Alyssa Rautenberg. Jenny Reisner. Casey Richardson. Rob Rydell. Sarah Schoenhut. Gwendali Rosado Rivera. Matthew Shapiro. Kyle Shepard. Jacob Siegel. Mary C. Sloan. William Spiller. Diana Stern. Benjamin Sticks. Hillary Susskind. David Allen Thompson. Karen Tobias. Chelsea Towns. Stacy Ullman. Nicole Varallo. Lisa Veselovsky. Laura Villanueva. And Anna Starkovsky. If there are any more applause left in you, let's give a big round to everyone in the class of 2011. I'm happy to introduce Dean Andrew Sunshine, Director of the Postbac Premed Program.
I once saw a short animated film in which a soldier comes to on a battlefield, hears the groans of an injured comrade, and undertakes to carry him to safety. Cresting a hill, the soldier sees below him hundreds more lying wounded. Despair all but overwhelms the soldier. He can't possibly save them all. Finally, he decides that if he can save just the man on his back, it will be enough for now, and he presses on. This remarkable film was made by our next speaker, Max Cohen. After graduating from Vassar in 2005, Max worked as an EMT here in New York. His film, Der Soldat, is a meditation on his work. As well-told stories often do, the film tells a somewhat inconclusive tale. But there is a sequel. In light of the experiences that inspired the film, Max decided to complete postbac studies at Columbia and apply to medical school. Max has a deep understanding of the human condition, so I can't wait to hear his account of life as a postbac. Please welcome Max Cohen, class of 2011.
Thank you, Dean Sunshine, for that very, very kind introduction. And thank you, everybody, for just giving me a few minutes to talk to you on this really, really happy day. And congratulations, everybody, because we all did so much stuff to get here today. Over the past couple of weeks, I've talked to some of you about to describe your experiences as postbacs. And almost everybody said something first and occasionally only about the difficulty. And usually, though, they said it in cruder language than that. And it's true. It was really hard. At times, brutally so. We all know it, inside and out. Almost everyone here is fresh from the maw of the biology final exam yesterday. And a few unlucky people had their organic chemistry finals yesterday, too. If the point wasn't clear before, it is now. But one day out, the difficulty of the program is already fading from my mind. And I studied a lot, and I don't remember each hour. And the tests were at times heart-wrenching, but they've all started to merge together in my memory. I remember instead the moments when I experienced a deep intellectual awe from the things that we were taught. Professor Budick, who's been lecturing on physics since 1963, taught us that 1 out of every 100 dots in the static on an old television is the result of microwaves that have been billowing across space since the Big Bang. I escaped a lab course one day to a room upstairs where graduate students had created a small metal chamber that was surrounded by lasers that contained inside of it the coldest, cleanest place in the entire universe. And I worked for many years as an artist, and I never saw anything as beautiful as the enzyme that produces the energy of all multicellular life, twitching and spinning in a grainy black and white video. It's been a privilege to spend 2 years just skimming the surface of the sciences, and I'm in complete awe of the feats of the countless women and men who've created the bodies of knowledge that have become biology, chemistry, physics, and mathematics. Embracing this sense of awe is one of the reasons that I've enjoyed the last 2 years. We all began this process knowing that it is, in many ways, simply a time trial for medical schools. And with that in mind, we've all felt that panicked urge to know our grades, and the median, and the mean, and the standard deviations, and the highs and lows of each test, each quiz, each homework assignment. Succumbing to our fears would have reduced these 2 years to an MCAT preparatory course. And I would not have survived 2 years of MCAT prep. I may not have survived a few months of it, but Doctors Budick and Mauschwitz and many others did not cede their territory to our mania. They didn't just give us the MCAT. We're a talented and driven bunch, and we can handle that on our own. That's not why they're here. Professor Budick gave me physics in all of its beauty, stunning complexity, and eccentricity. He was my favorite, and we all had a teacher who moved us, and I'm grateful to him and to all the professors who have made this an intellectual experience and not merely an exercise in just jumping through hoops. Now, I'm not denying us our moment where we get to say to Columbia and to our families and to our mentors and to our peers that we have all gone through hell to earn a place among the professional healers. We all gave up things to be here and stopped our previous lives in order to take the first tentative steps into this new one. But life itself never stopped while we were here. And I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that there is a shadow hanging over today. Morgan Ash was one of us, and she died this year of leukemia. I'm left regretting that I didn't have the opportunity to get to know her, but many people did, and they all feel her absence strongly. We all made true friends during these 2 years, and in a larger sense became a part of a community that isn't whole without her. In our time here, people we knew passed away. Others were born, and our loved ones had their own triumphs and setbacks. Life happened while we thought that we were just preparing for it. I'm glad that we did not just rush through this program or simply wish it were over, because if we're not careful, we'll rush all the way to the end. And if there were moments where we felt our hearts harden, where the competition consumed, even briefly, the desire to become healing, to become healers, and to ease suffering, I hope that we all resisted and can continue to resist obscuring our humanity. We are only at the very beginning of a long and difficult academic road that will be the most challenging due to its ability to create a false distance between us and the people who we would care for. I recently attended a lunch with Dean Ahn where he talked about how much medical schools love postbacs, which is a huge shift from a few decades ago when there was just a handful of non-traditional students, and if you took a few years off or radically changed direction, it was seen as a liability. And now we are the it kids. Why? First, and most obviously to me, we are all some mean, curve-killing machines. And on that note, I think that it's important that I apologize on our behalf to all of the unfortunate undergraduates of Columbia University who had to compete with the people in this program. And thank you, Columbia, for taking on this ragtag bunch of overachievers and turning us all into the strong applicants that we have become. But there have always been academically talented people in medicine, so what else? What else about postbacs in particular holds promise for the future of this profession? Medical schools are under a lot of pressure to humanize their curricula, to produce physicians who see people suffering beneath the disease. And they see our promise in our experiences. We aren't simply cutthroat pre-meds, we are people with lives and commitments like the patients that we would care for. Michael DiBianco is one of my friends in this program. He had a successful career in the software world before deciding to join this one. His wife, Amanda, was 9 months pregnant with their first child right before our physics final. Mike told me that he was down on his knees next to her belly, begging his child to please wait. Please. Very, very gracefully, Amelia postponed her birth until a few days after that test. Mike and his new family were plunged into the world of infant care with an almost endless array of doctors and checkups and nutrition considerations and daycare, the entire experience of having a child, all while studying magnetic fields and molecular orbitals with the rest of us. He would tell stories during our very frequent study breaks about the good and the bad doctors and how clear the differences were between them. His opportunity to live through all of this from the patient's side before taking up a stethoscope himself is invaluable. Mike is a smart and thoughtful person, and he'll make a good doctor. Amelia has given him the chance to become a great one. Now, I don't have any children or any on the way, but the point isn't that we are all like Mike. Rather, it's that we've all done things that broaden our perspectives. We are business consultants and artists, chefs and opera singers, nonprofit do-gooders and corporate raiders, philosophers, construction workers, theater directors, recent college graduates, and gay rights advocates. All of us have lived outside the fast lane of this profession and can bring that outside knowledge to the practice of medicine. And we can do our part in helping this nation and the world embrace the promises of humane care and dignity. In our eclectic lives and now certified accomplishments, we will soon have the power to ease suffering for all people, rich and poor, insured and not, American and otherwise. We can do this work with our eyes and hearts open until illness is never again the result of inequality and indifference. Now let's stop. I've said a lot, and if you remember only one thing from everything that I've said today, it should be this. Wash your hands. Unimaginable numbers of people die in US hospitals each year because well-intentioned medical professionals, like the ones that we would become, have not yet embraced washing their hands regularly. It's the simplest thing you can do to help others. I'll leave you now with a line from Dante's Divine Comedy, not the famous inscription on the gates of hell, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." No. Instead, it's the last line of the Inferno. And then we came out to see once more the stars. Congratulations, everyone. Thank you.
Max, thank you so much for that wonderful, wonderful speech. With Max, I want to really acknowledge the family and friends who are with us today and who have perhaps, like Emilia, made sacrifices over the last few years in support of all of your educations. And perhaps we'll have to continue to do so. So thank you for being here with us and for all that you've done for our graduates. Still, I'd like to close our ceremony today by speaking, offering a few words of praise and encouragement directly to the students who are with us here today because they've completed the Columbia University Postbaccalaureate Premedical Program. This has been an exciting and eventful year in the program. The PMA has had an amazing year of programming and leadership, and I also want to acknowledge them for their great service to the school. Thank you so much. As happy as I am to celebrate with you today, like Max, I know that the year has had its challenges and unfortunately also its tragedies. You know that I am thinking also of Morgan Ash, who wrote to me last August that the prospect of returning to her postbac studies was, quote, "the light at the end of my tunnel." I am so sorry that she was not able to return to us, and I would ask all of our graduates in your future work as healthcare professionals to work in her spirit and on her behalf. But let me close with a few encouraging words. I want to honor the extraordinary sense of dedication and purpose that have brought you to this moment. You have toiled, sacrificed, and probably even sweated, perhaps as recently as last night, in response to a moment's inspiration, a moment that revealed to you a vocation for healthcare. You did not allow that moment of insight to remain an idle fancy or a plan for someday later on. You got to work, and today is the result of that work. You are now one step closer to joining the medical fraternity. Voltaire wrote that, quote, "Men, and I add women, who are occupied in the restoration of health to other men by the joint exertion of skill and humanity are above all the great of the earth. They even partake of divinity, since to preserve and renew is almost as noble as to create." You have chosen a difficult path, and you have chosen it at a difficult time, at a true turning point for medical care in the United States. But the rewards for your choice will be enormous and diverse. I know that this is not the end of the educational road for you, but rather the beginning. What I wish for all of you is that the pride and sense of accomplishment that you feel today will buoy you up through the challenges that lie ahead. Many of you came into this program thinking, can I really do this? Can I have a career in healthcare? Today, you can tell yourself, I can, I will. Never let that faith in yourself waver. Our faith in you certainly never will. This may be graduation, but we will always be here for you, for advice, for assistance, and for fellowship. We will also be calling upon you to mentor the generations that will follow you. Please stay in touch with us and allow us to continue to cheer you on and support you in your ascent to even greater achievement. Congratulations once more to you all. And now, exams being over, I invite you to join us in the back of the rotunda for some refreshments. Thank you so much for joining us today.